Welcome to the Life with People podcast. This podcast is about finding, building, rebuilding, and reimagining community. My hope is that these conversations encourage you to reach for connection and community wherever you find yourself. This is our third episode in a series of conversations focused on the topic of grief and how we can hold space for it in our relationships. In this episode, I sit down with my good friend, Jocelyn Jackson Williams, who's a grief recovery specialist. She calls herself an advocate for healing, recovery, and happiness. And I can attest, this is the best description for my friend. And can I just say, she is an all-around stellar human being. I am excited for you to listen in to our conversation, and I would love to know your takeaways. Anyway, let's go. All right. Well, welcome back to another episode of Life with People. I have my dear friend Jocelyn Williams with me, and I'm so happy that she's here and she's taken the time to be with us today. Jocelyn and I met, it's been several years ago now, working for a nonprofit called Reach Up, Reach Out with our dear friends Alex and Shana Jones Moreno. Huge shout out to them for introducing me to a dear friend. Jocelyn is a grief recovery method specialist. So as we're in the middle of a series on walking with people and holding space for grief, I was like, there's not that many people better to talk to than Jocelyn. So anyway, Jocelyn, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. If you don't mind, would you just spend a few minutes giving us a little bit of your background and what got you to this place?
It's interesting because those of us who are specialists, we all say none of us grew up saying, "Oh, I want to be a grief recovery method specialist." When I grew up, we find the profession based out of the need that we all have really to learn how to heal and recover. So I got started when I was on staff at a church called Oasis, which is where I met Shana and Alex.
Okay.
And I was tasked with finding a recovery program for grievers because the pastors were equipped to pastor, but that doesn't mean that you know how to help somebody in their grief and pain. So I started researching recovery programs and I Googled grief counselors, and the first 5 people I called said they were all trained at the Grief Recovery Institute. I was like, I clearly have to call this place. And I called and I talked to the then director, Russell Friedman, who became my mentor. But, we talked for, I would say like 45 minutes. So first of all, I was astounded that he spent that much time with just one person on the phone. And there was not a second of that time that felt like a sales pitch. Like he just wanted to know about me and my life, even though I came there thinking I was going to figure out how to help other people. I was just convinced that this was a good place to go. So I got trained. And during my certification training, this is a hint for anyone who in the future, if you want to do a certification training, I'm just going to let you in on a little secret. You're going to be spending about 75% of the time working on yourself. And so I was very taken off guard because I thought I was there to help other people. And I just was not adept at working on anything personally of processing my emotions. I just grew up in a household where we just didn't talk about feelings. So it was all very new and uncomfortable because I just was not used to it. And I just came back from that training and started helping people at church. And then people in the community found out about it. So it was church folks mixed with some community folks. Sometimes some of those groups were fun. And then in the first few years of me doing that work, one of the certification trainers retired. And so the Institute reached out to me and asked me if I could become a trainer. So I've been doing that as well for a long time. So just helping all of the professionals, say like therapists or social workers or anybody who doesn't have that particular training, in their field. They typically come to the institute, and then we train them and first help them help themselves so they learn how to help other people.
Mhm. That's amazing. My last interview with a friend, her name's Cece, and she's a
Hmm.
marriage and family therapist. And
Yep.
she was like, we spent one weekend on grief. She was
Yep.
like, I got into this to help people, to help a lot of different people. But one of the things was to help grievers. And she's like, we spent one weekend.
Yep, that's another one, MFTs,
Yeah.
chaplains. I'm just thinking of the roster that I'm used to seeing when we do trainings. There's so many different professions who they're
Help
built
others.
around helping other
Yeah.
people, helping others, but this particular area of grief recovery is just not included in their own training, so that's why they end up coming to the institute, to get that particular assistance that they can provide.
No, and that's amazing. I kind of love that it was like talking to Cece, now I'm talking to you. I'm like, oh, it's amazing to think about this whole grief world, even, and how where are there gaps and how can
Mhm.
they be filled, right? And so if you're listening to this and you are in the helping professions and you need a little bit more experience, resources for working with people and walking with them through grief, I have been through the grief recovery method with you. I went through a bad breakup. And Jocelyn, I remember we were in a meeting together for Reach Up, Reach Out, and you were like, "So, I have a grief group coming up." And I was like, "Okay." And you're like, "I was thinking."
I know that's so.
And I was like, "Oh, okay." Yeah, and it was for me, it was really amazing. I was like, "I don't know, like, how will this be? It feels a little weird." I told a couple friends, "I'm in this grief group," and they're like, "Are you serious?" And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
"Yeah, I'm serious."
Y
Like, anyway, um, and I did feel a little dramatic because I was like, "Someone didn't die, I just went through a hard breakup," and it's like I was having a hard time processing it and going through it. But it
Yeah.
ended up being such a healing and pivotal process for me because I was able to, like,
Yeah.
actually pare down, and I remember telling you, like, I was doing the homework this week and I realized I feel abandoned by God right now, which was
Mhm.
an experience I did not know what to do with,
Yeah.
and it helped me to find language and to face that so
Yeah.
I can move through it and be like, "I'm not abandoned by God, but I feel that right now." Just being able to honestly acknowledge that.
Yeah.
So, and then anyway, that's just one random thing I remember from that.
But that's a big it's a big thing, the one of the major, like, precepts we have is to tell the truth about yourself, and, it can be very easy to hide certain parts of ourself that we might be ashamed of, like, because who wants to walk around and say, "I'm mad at God," or who wants to walk
Yeah,
around and
sure.
say, "God's abandoned me?" Like, nobody's
Yeah. Yeah.
believers don't tend to jump to that, instead, it's very tempting to profess all the things that we know about God, and that's wonderful, but how do you feel?
Right.
And that's the spirit of the grief recovery method is, can we tell the truth about ourselves,
Mhm.
despising any shame, just being honest about where we are because we can't heal anything that we're not truthful about.
That's so good. It's so good. Yeah, especially for believers and even for myself coming from like I spent a long time in full-time ministry and being
Mhm.
like, "Oh yeah, like let me help you experience and have a relationship with Jesus." Also, I don't know where he is right now. Not sure.
Yeah.
Like I was like, what
Right.
do with that? So anyway, I approach myself and I mean through that process and then also walking through extreme loss with a couple friends, I realize now how differently I approach people and how
Mhm.
differently I approach myself when
Mm,
I'm processing a loss. Like
mhm.
much kinder to myself.
Yeah.
Much kinder
That's
like, and yeah, it's just different. So
Mhm.
anyway, thank you for inviting me into your grief group and
Thank you for saying yes.
yeah, for walking with me through the process. I know we've been talking about it a little bit, but can you give us a little bit more information about what the grief recovery method is? I love that you talked about the being honest with yourself part. That's
Yeah.
so big in it.
That's foundational. When people ask, "What is it like?" My favorite way to describe it is that it's an undoing and then a rebuilding.
Mm,
And so the undoing is, um, separating out all the ways that we've learned that quote unquote learned to handle our grief, the things that are not actually helpful, the things that really keep us stuck in our pain and kind of on a like a hamster wheel, just churn, and not really moving forward. And when we do that, we can get really accustomed to that process, and so we might think that this is just, the best it's gonna get, and we learn how to manage and cope with where we are instead of moving forward to the second part, which is like the rebuilding. And so the rebuilding of the grief recovery method is a three-step process that helps you deal with everything that's been inside, that you've been holding inside, either suppressing it, pretending it doesn't exist, whatever those things are, the things you're afraid to talk about. Um, we it's all encapsulated the way we talk about it and the things that we wish were different or better or more. Um, and whatever unmet hopes, dreams, and expectations that we had for a relationship, it's discovering all of those things and learning how to say goodbye to the things that we're holding on to, that we think that there's somehow magically this version, this emotional version we have in our minds is gonna come to be able to say goodbye to the things that are in our imaginations, but also keep us from healing.
Yeah.
And so to be able to really accept reality for what it is and the sting of it, not running away from it, feeling it and processing it so we can move forward. And like, the goal, one of the ways we talk about it is we want to be able to expand our capacity for happiness.
Mm,
Because when we're grieving, it's quite the opposite. It's
sure.
very constricted. And sometimes it may feel or seem like nothing's ever going to get better. But that's the grief talking. And my mentor, Russell, used to always say in trainings, he would be like, "You guys, this is grief recovery. The emphasis is on recovery."
Mm,
So people come for various types of grief, but what we do, whatever your grief is, we move into the second part, that rebuilding and the recovery aspect of what are the things I need to discover about myself, tell the truth about myself, so I can know what I need to say goodbye to that's
mm,
keeping me stuck.
mm.
So
That's really good. I remembered as you were explaining that was like this concept of my dog wants to be here right now.
hang out with us.
Hi, Bings. Um, this concept of closing the loops. So there's unfinished either conversations sometimes or unanswered questions or
Mhm.
unprocessed emotion. And that was one
Yeah.
thing for me in the process. It was like, oh, I'm on this crazy hamster wheel because I have unanswered questions or because
Mhm.
I have conversations where they're unfinished. I didn't get to finish
Yeah.
those conversations. There's no way to finish them. It was like,
Mhm.
hey, we were midstream on this thing. And now what do I do? Right. And
Yeah.
so that practice of being like, oh, I can play this out a little and I
Mhm.
can close the loop for myself. And I
Yeah.
you know, with the like for me as like a person of faith, like even bring God into the process and be like, all right, like, Lord, help me close this loop, like, or help me just what is the end of this sentence? What is it? Does that make sense? And that
No,
kind of
it
thing.
makes complete sense, and
Yeah.
you're talking about something that actually I'm really happy to hear a lot of therapists and other people say the same thing. Like, there used to be this big whoop-de-doo about having closure, like, I have to get closure with this person,
With
like,
the actual person. Yeah.
yeah, like,
Right.
I have
Right.
connected, I have to see this person, I need to
Right.
say these things, and they need to apologize or XYZ,
Right.
like, planning out this whole way that closure looks,
Right.
which is a recipe for disaster, because if that person isn't capable or willing to give you what you say you need, then you're gonna stay stuck. So,
Mhm.
you talking about closing the loop for yourself is, like, on the money,
Mhm.
that's the spirit behind recovery. What can I do,
Mhm.
to heal?
Mhm.
And I'll bring God in the process. I'll ask in prayer for assistance. But what I'm not gonna do is go ask that person.
Sure. And I mean, and sometimes in the case of like loss, like when someone has passed away, you can literally
Right.
you have no option. Like you
Yep.
have not to go ask that person.
Yep.
And
Mhm.
so I know one thing in grief recovery that we did was stand in proxy. Like it was
Mhm.
like I remember like writing a letter and then like being on Zoom with someone who is, you know, we've been in grief recovery for a few weeks, but we're still basically strangers and being like, let me read you my letter. You know?
Mhm.
I don't know if you know this. Actually, the person that I was in the group, bless her heart, she was like, I think you should mail that to him. And I was like, no. I was like, no, I don't think I should, but like
Maybe I was not clear in my instructions.
you were very clear, but it was like I was like, because I think she was like, maybe love is possible, you know, like
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
just love's love, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe this is possible. I was like, no, 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 like and this is I'm getting it out, you know, but it was anyway, all to say it was still like it was such an important practice. I think it's easy to look at that and be like, oh, it's kind of cheesy, right? Like to read it to somebody else. You could just read it to yourself and I'm like, oh, there is something powerful about someone witnessing
Mhm.
your process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Healing is always done in community.
Mhm.
Sometimes people will well, this is more so for people who want to become specialists. They'll they'll say, "Oh, I want to graph myself." And it's always an interesting conversation to try to steer them away from that because I get it. I get you. Like, who doesn't want to understand themselves better? Why do I do the things I do? Why did I make that decision? Why did I react that way? Like,
Sure.
fair questions about yourself. But none of those questions are unto yourself. They're always in relation to someone else.
Mm,
In understanding yourself within each relationship, you will understand yourself better.
mm.
Um, yeah,
That's
I
interesting. I mean, you started that by saying
Mhm.
healing always happens in
In
community.
community,
And I'm
yeah.
curious if you would say more about that, because one thing I wanted to ask you was how do grief groups like aid in that process?
Mhm.
Um, so why do you think grief groups are so important in moving through the hard parts of the grief process? So basically you kind of said it like healing always happens in community, but I'm curious if you would say a little more
Yeah.
about that.
And, in the future, I may copy this particular part of the clip
That's
because
fine.
people come to me, and say, "I need to work one-on-one with you." I'm in my mind instantly how am I telling myself, "How am I gonna convince this person to get in a group?" Because you can do a one-on-one, that's fine, because 2
Yeah.
people is still a group,
Hmm.
but there's something about the group dynamic that just cannot be beat, and, I think, to me, one of the most special things that I've witnessed when people connect in groups is that they can see people from disparate walks of life, just completely different people, seemingly completely different lives, and then um, here they are in a group learning from one another.
Hmm.
One of the things that I think is a gift in working in a groups is really dispelling this idea that my pain is unique to me and I'm the only one going through this. No one knows, nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Uh, but that's a grief in and of itself when you feel that alone, that you have
Right.
no one to reach out to. And those sort of thoughts are the ones that keep people keeping things to themselves.
Sure.
And so there's just so many ways and benefits of being in a group. Like, for instance, in my group, when I did my training, it was 15 women and 1 man.
Okay.
And, and the guy was there because, he just broke up with his girlfriend and he was distraught. And when I tell you, I was in my 30s, I guess, when I was in this training. It sounds crazy to me, but I was in my 30s watching this man cry and grieve, and it just hit me because I grew up with a different, expectation for men and for boys, young men, like, they're tough, they don't have feelings, they definitely don't cry, you're a big boy. So, without even really thinking, we really subconsciously shut off this humanity aspect of being a man, which is, "Oh, men have feelings too."
For sure.
And it took me seeing it. I had to see that in community, and where else am I gonna see that? 'Cause you're not gonna see men walking down the streets crying, talking about their girlfriend. They in the safety of a group. he was able to tell the truth about himself and really just shift some things, some beliefs that I had that needed some help and support. So just there's just story upon story of how we learn from one another and when we place ourselves in an environment to do so.
Mhm. Oh, that's so good. This is a little bit of a gender stereotype, but it's like even kind of like going in that vein. And again, like this could be personality. It might not just be gender, but in general, culturally, if you look at like what culture says about men and women kind of find places to express their emotions
Mhm.
much more readily
Yeah.
than men do, right? There's not as many acceptable places.
Yeah.
So it's kind
Mhm.
of beautiful even to think about that the grief recovery group for that individual was a place where his emotions and his process was welcome.
Mhm.
He didn't have to hide it. He didn't have to join a rough and tumble sport
Yep.
for something to be like, I'm kind of getting this out, but I'm still not
Mhm.
getting, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I know that's a huge, broad stroke kind of stereotype, but I think that
Yeah.
could,
But I
then
think
could be
it's
said for other people too, like of like
yeah.
they didn't feel safe in whatever settings, right?
Mhm.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I don't see it as a stereotype as much as just as socialization. Like
Sure.
they're socialized differently, and
Mm-hmm.
they're taught to behave a certain way
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't include the expression of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, and things are getting better, but
Sure.
especially growing up where emotion was thought of as weakness, like the
Right.
display of an emotion is a display of weakness as opposed to being a display of your humanity, which is what it actually is.
Wow, that's so good. Wait, so I want to say it one more time because that was so good. Emotion is not a display of your weakness, it's a display of your humanity. That's so beautiful, right? We don't often talk about the emotions, even of God, but it's like if you just read the Bible, our God has a spectrum of emotions and we were made
Yep.
in his image, right? So, like,
Mhm. Mhm.
so if you want to call like the person who made you weak, sure, that's fine. You know, like, but
If you
like,
want.
I don't know if I would want to do that, but like,
But just thinking about of a former pastor friend of mine, he used to say, if we just said out loud the stuff that we're thinking in our head, half the time that will solve the problem for us. Because when we hear how ridiculous we sound, then we can do something about it. When we just keep it churning in our head, it sounds one way, but to say it out loud is quite another, So I think sometimes we just think about things like that and you never get around to saying it,
sure,
which would help us see the ridiculousness.
the ridiculousness of it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. That's awesome. So the very first time I met you was
Mhm.
actually at Expression 58. You came and you led a 1 day grief
Was
workshop.
that the first day?
That was, I
Oh,
think, the first time I actually ever really like met you face to
mm,
face. And uh my dear friend had recently passed away. It was like for some reason in that church in that season, several people in the community experienced very big losses on
yeah.
like a month or two.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, Jen and Honoslito, shout out to you guys for having the wherewithal to be like, our community is really hurting right now.
Yeah.
Like, we have a lot of people who've been through really intense loss, and they brought you in and did a half day grief workshop. And you did, I don't know, maybe an hour of teaching.
Yeah.
I think, but like for most of the day, we just went around because there's a
Yes.
lot of us, and you just like pass the microphone. Please share your loss.
Yes.
So then we like went around, and I remember at the beginning being like, "This is gonna take a long time. Like, what are we doing?" And then like by the end of it, I was like, "This is the best thing." Like, with this, what's this so?
Okay, can I tell you the behind the scenes?
Sure, you totally can. You totally can. But I remember being
Because I
like,
don't think I don't know if I've ever talked about it.
"Okay,
So
tell us, tell me."
I showed up there with a whole chart,
Yeah, you had a big
discussion,
board that you were
blah,
using.
blah, blah, and
Yeah.
I got in there and I felt like God was saying, You are going to have every person in this room talk about their loss. You're gonna have
Whoa.
every person show up as a griever. You are not about to do some lecture that people can take some nice notes and go on about their way and not make it personal for them. And I thought the same thing. I was like, God, you see how many people are in this room? It's too many people.
Well, that's so funny.
I'm so glad you shared that because I remember sitting there and being like, "Is this what she does? Is this what her seminars are like?" I was like, "She seems like she's ready to teach." And you taught a little bit. The
Yeah.
reason I thought about this was because like, my next question for you is something that I learned in your abbreviated teaching time because you
Mhm.
spent most of the time letting us share our losses.
Yep.
Um, wow, well, thanks for sharing that because it was so powerful.
Yeah.
It did take a long time, but it was really, really powerful, and it felt like I remember I was kinda toward the end, and I remember getting to my s getting to me and me being like, "Okay." But as I was sharing, I was like, "Oh, something is cracking open inside
Mhm.
of me in these, like, 2 sentences."
Yeah.
Sharing about my loss. And also just hearing, like, I knew people were going through stuff, but hearing each person share,
Yeah.
it was like, oh,
Yep.
the amount of like empathy that I could uh hold for them and carry for them and the way I could be more sensitive. Like
Mhm.
even like
Yeah.
when you run into someone, it's not that you ignore the other parts of our life, but there is an element of they're going through something really hard. I'm not gonna come at you with a birthday cake right now or like drums, like
Mhm.
I'm gonna come really gently and ask what's going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's back to the whole community thing. That was an exploration in being in community,
mhm,
and I think one of the, reasons the Lord
yeah,
made it happen was because especially in church culture, we get so especially in church culture, I feel like we get so used to helping others and doing the things and being prepared for, this event and it is very quick to get lost in the sauce and
mhm,
we stop seeing each other and we don't um recognize that we are in just as much need
mm,
and the temptation to be performative, I think, is very high within church structures because we're trying to win souls. We're doing a lot of things, and so we
right,
feel like we need to show up a particular way. But where are we in the process? We are never without the need of being our authentic selves, even
yeah,
while we're helping other people. And I remember that day too. I felt like it was beautiful
yeah,
for y'all to experience with one another, for hopefully for some people to see one another in a way that
mhm,
you wouldn't have gotten the opportunity. So
mhm,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was definitely different takeaways than I was expecting from the day, right?
Mhm.
Because I had, like I mentioned, lost a friend, and I was going because I was like, okay, I know I'm walking through my own loss, but also I want to know how to like walk with my friend who's also like, I'm grieving the
Yeah.
loss of her husband, but she's going through a much
Mhm.
more devastating, life altering moment. And how do I be supportive for? And I remember coming up and talking to you after a
Uh-huh.
few minutes, but yeah, so the day was not like I was there to take notes. I was ready for
Yep.
this, right? It was something
Mhm.
different than I expected for sure. But I did walk away with such a sense of like I've it was a holy time, holy moment of like I've borne witness to what
Mhm.
people are walking through, and it was
Right.
very powerful.
Yeah. And what better way than to hear out of their mouths? Like I can share some
Sure.
some gems and whatever, but what better way than to hear from them?
For sure, for
And
sure.
for each one of us to that was a safe space for each one of us to be free to say some things that are very dear to our heart. That maybe we've said in prayer, but we have not spoken out loud to a room full of people who are supposed to be our brothers and sisters in
For
Christ.
sure. For sure. Yeah.
Better place.
Yeah. No, it was really powerful. One thing I did take away from your
Oh, what's that?
time that day though was that there are lots of type of loss. There are
Mhm.
lots of that sounded kind of weird, but
I knew what
there
you were
are
saying.
a lot of losses. A lot of times we think of the big ones like death, divorce, um, maybe sometimes moving gets in there or
Mhm.
loss of a job
Yep.
or something kind of gets snuck in there. But there's
Mhm.
actually a lot of different kinds of losses.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious if you don't mind just sharing with us what some of those might be, some that we might think about. Um, 'Cause it's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, we always say there's over 40 different types of losses that a person can encounter, and we just got that from a study that 2 psychologists did where they talked about major life changes, and what we know change to be loss, and to be grief. So, you know, we have about 5 different working definitions of what grief is, and one of them is that it's a change in any familiar pattern of behavior. So anything that we're used to that changes is essentially grief. And, I think one of the more important ways to talk about some types of losses that maybe we don't necessarily think about is that some of them are conflicting, and so it's important to know that because sometimes there are things to celebrate and to be very happy about, but there can be a grief element attached to it. But because we don't want to be a Debbie Downer or we don't want to seem ungrateful or whatever it is, we don't process the loss that gets attached to it.
Sure.
The best example I tend to use in trainings is retirement.
Mm.
Because many of us think like, "Ooh, that's those are life goals." And
I felt
it would be great, you know, the day I'm
Sure.
not working anymore. But if you've been used to working at a particular place, maybe for decades, or if you've established an entire friend group through work, and you've lived life with people, or you've just been really used to the habit of getting up and going somewhere, and then all of a sudden that changes, that is a loss, and, there was this commercial, I love it, it was the best example of this. It was this woman was retiring, and she had a cake in her hands, and everybody's cheering her on, like, "Yay!" as she's getting in the elevator, and so there's all this celebration around her, and the door's closing, and she still has a smile on her face and then a tear rolling down her eyes. Because that's the conflicting feeling, like, we can hold 2 emotions at the same time, the happy and the sad, you know, the celebration and the loss. But if
Mhm.
we don't understand grief in that way, that there can be conflicting feelings, we'll just focus on the happy and never deal with the sad or the not so happy or anything that we would consider to be like a negative emotion. So
For sure.
that's one. Um,
That's really good.
yeah.
It's like anytime you move towards something new, you're leaving something behind,
Mhm.
right? And so I think you're right. We don't think about that very often. It's like you
Yeah.
graduate high school and
Yeah,
you're either going into
graduation's a
adulthood or into a college, and it's like that's really great, but you're also
Mhm.
leaving a bunch of stuff behind,
Mhm.
you know?
Yep. Everything you've known about life up until that part. And, you know, as a teenager, I think we probably, are dreaming of the days we're out on our own, making our
Yeah.
own decisions. But then when we get out into that world by ourselves, we realize, "Oh, there's some things we didn't realize we had it really good." We didn't have to pay a bill.
Phoning a mom, phoning a dad, like, need you still.
I remember in my freshman year calling my mom asking her to come get me because I was just homesick. And I know it broke her heart that she was like, "No, you have to stay there." And like I'm crying. I'm sure when she got off the phone she was crying too, but that was like that was an adjustment in the midst of being really happy about being somewhere else and, you know, being my own person.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
On that note, curious because I do feel like one of the best ways to learn about grief is to hear a story. Curious a little bit about your own story with grief, since you mentioned your mom.
Yeah. So my mom died in 2002. And it was unexpected. I had actually just this is when I was living in Los Angeles and she was in the Bay Area. I had just seen her that weekend prior, and she was really excited. She got a good diagnosis, I guess, checkup from the doctor because usually every time she went to the doctor, it was like a new medication she had to take or something else she had to be tested for. And this is the first time that she had had a more like clean bill of health, so that was really exciting to her. Um, and I left her on a Sunday and then got a call the next day on Monday. She had had a heart attack and died suddenly. And my mom was the greatest expression of unconditional love that I ever experienced. So, one of the things that, and there are many, one of the things that I was grieving in losing her was the experience of being loved.
Mm.
And this is all, you know, after lots of work to figure out. Like, all I knew that I just felt crappy. I didn't know
Aw.
any reason why. I didn't have the particulars yet. Um, so I didn't realize that my concept of love was really wrapped around her and who she was.
Okay.
So when she was gone, that concept was gone as well, and that was something that had to be rebuilt into a new version.
Mm.
Um, but it was just really difficult. At the time, I had a job where, I was an independent contractor, so I could set my own hours. So I would work till probably noon and then just get in bed, and that was my routine for months because I was just so exhausted. It was very draining to try to pretend like I was normal like everybody else when I felt so devastated inside. And, so I read a couple of books, very studious, so I just thought I would study my way through this grief and work it out that way. But just felt like something was off, and especially, I mean, I think we talked about this, there's a concept that there's stages of grief, but it's not real, because grief is not linear. You can't go through this perfect, like, linear it's I love this there's this image, like, here's what people say grief is like, it's a straight line, and here's what it really is, it looks like a roller coaster, it's, like, all over the place, because that's what it actually feels like emotionally. So I remember when I believed though in those stages, I think I had gotten to stage 3 and it had a bad day and was back at 1. So I'm thinking, "Oh, I'm regressing. I'm not getting better. I'm getting worse." So I thought there was something wrong with me.
Okay.
Um, so I reached out to a pastor and he tried to assure me that there was something wrong with me. There was nothing wrong with
Okay.
me.
I was like, oh.
Yeah, there is something wrong. No. He was like, "No, there's nothing wrong with you. You're grieving." But then I reached out to a therapist because I'm just trying to get somebody to tell me there's something wrong with me because that's how uncomfortable I felt. This is before I even got into, grief recovery. Um, and I remember getting very mad at that therapist. And she was so smart. She was, trying to calm me down. And she's like, "Well, I think maybe you said you go to church, so maybe you should talk to your pastor and see what they say." And I remember being so mad. I was like, "I already did, and he's saying the same thing you said to me." Somebody tell me I'm crazy. Because that's I wanted some sort of answer for how I was feeling, and it was
Right.
not,
And grief wasn't enough, right? You didn't want to just
yeah,
like
you're grieving.
grieving. Okay.
No, I don't like this. Nope. Yes.
Okay.
Uh, so that was the beginning of a healing journey, that took a couple of twists and turns. I remember being at a beach, I think the following summer, and looking at the water and looking at God's creation and thinking, "Man, this is really complex what God's created. And surely, if he can do all of this, he can help me sort all this out." So there was a spiritual healing that started in that moment for me. Oh, I should share this too. Um, when my mom died and I was going to the airport, I had my Bible with me and I never do this. I'm not I'm just gonna open the Bible and just
Okay.
read wherever I like a plan.
No
But
biblical roulette.
no, no roulette. But this was a roulette day for sure. It's like I can't even think straight. And I'm not joking when I tell you the very first scripture I saw was, "Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints." And,
Was
so I
that
had
comforting or did that make you mad?
no, no, it was actually comforting
Okay.
to me, because what it said to me is that God is hurting too. He's
Mhm.
sad that I'm sad.
Yeah.
That meant a lot because, I think it helped me throughout the process to not feel like I was abandoned,
Yeah.
by God. And I see what you mean by, like, by the question, because it could go either way,
Yeah.
but for me, it was very comforting because I needed that perspective that God is aware, um, and he didn't take my mom away from me. I
Right.
think that was the connection that I heard, and that he didn't take her away, and that my pain matters to him. That's quickly the kind of the comfort that I think felt in the moment.
That's really good.
Which is helpful, right? Because especially as believers, again, here we're getting back to telling the truth about yourself. If you don't tell the truth about yourself and you say all the things, all the Christianese things we say at the time of someone's death, but at the same time, inwardly, we feel like something's been taken from us. What do therapists call, like, cognitive dissonance? Like, just
Oh yeah.
you're saying one thing and feeling something altogether different, and that's a recipe for disaster.
For sure.
So I was grateful to have that particular moment, and then um, after people would not tell me I was crazy, I just continued on, as best as I could. And it was years later that I found the institute.
Mm,
Um, and thought that I was gonna learn something new about losing my mom through this method.
yeah.
And, I got in my training and we learned about unresolved grief and all the things inside of us that have not been processed. And I realized, oh, the most unresolved grief is not with my mom who has died, but it was with my dad who was very much alive at the time. My parents split when I was in high school, and then I lived with my mom. And then so I was separated from my dad. And again, we talked about nothing in my family. We kept everything inside. That was our family tradition.
We
And
just had Thanksgiving, and your Thanksgiving table was silent.
oh, we were
Oh,
eating,
no, kidding.
just eating food.
What?
We weren't talking about, yeah. I think that's part of why I just enjoy, like, having, like, deep conversations because it was just it was not a thing growing up, you know?
Okay, so you said your parents split up, your dad left, so your unresolved grief was with the loss of him moving out?
Yeah, there's a ton of things that happened, like, the reason why they split up, how my dad handled it, him leaving and me not having and if you can imagine people, this is in a world before cell phones, like, you know, not
Right.
there's this thing called a home phone. That was connected by wires, it was connected to your wall or something, and that was all I had, so you know, um, if we weren't home, there was highly likely that I was not going to have any, contact, and they, in their breakup, did the best they knew, but they had a hard time in their separation, and so think he felt it would be easier just to be away. That's me now understanding what he was going through as opposed to as a teenager thinking, "Oh, my dad just left me
Right.
and abandoned me." So when Russell was teaching me about unresolved grief, I'm like, "Oh, I have a ton of unresolved grief with my dad. There's a ton of things that I've felt and never said."
Yeah.
And so my first work that I did, grief recovery work that I did was on my relationship with my dad.
Wow.
And when we have people come to us for training, we like to encourage people, hey, you have a good idea of some grief in your life. You know it because a lot of it's taking up some energy.
Mm,
But sometimes what people do is they come thinking, I only have this one loss. This one thing that's taking up all the energy in my world right now. That's the only thing that I need help with. But to understand, like, nope, we have a ton of losses and they all need attention. And if we're open, we may realize that there's something else that may be calling out for attention
sure.
beyond this one thing that we're really, really focused on.
Right. Right. Well, for sure. Even in my own experience, it was like in grief recovery method, I went for like the loss of this relationship, but truly, like the deeper loss was, I really thought my life was going to look a lot different
Mm-hmm.
at that point in my life because I was in my upper
Mm-hmm.
30s. It wasn't just the loss or the death of the relationship, it was what it represented and
Yep.
all the things that I'd been hoping for, longing for, waiting for that I thought were coming and were not. Like
That's
that, like the loss of like just unmet expect all the things, right?
mm-hmm.
So it's interesting.
Yeah.
And
I
that's what
mean,
I was like, okay, God, where are you? Like,
mhm, and that's real, and I'm so glad you had an opportunity to ask that question
yeah, me
so you
too.
can get an answer. Because
Yeah,
if you don't ask it, then you're just walking around mad or
right.
stuffing things down.
Sure, sure.
Mhm.
Or being like,
Yeah.
maybe this isn't for me,
Mhm.
you
Yeah,
know?
then they start
Yeah.
because
We
we
tell
need
stories.
an answer, we're just gonna make something.
Right, right,
Mhm.
right. Exactly. Anyway, so
No, that's
thanks for sharing that.
yeah.
You said something.
Oh, oh,
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
oh, can I add one more thing
Yeah,
to
yeah, of course.
what you were just saying? So, turning 40 for me was exactly what you just said. Took me an extra decade to get to that, but I just remember being in a funk and, not really knowing why. And it was exactly like you said, because at that age, I had expected that my life would look completely different than what it was. And some of the things I was very conscious about, and some of the things I wasn't. It was just they were unconscious, but just still dreams living inside me. I don't think about them, but they're still in there anyways.
Right.
And all of that came to a head when I turned 40 because that number for some reason sparked like this should be happening by now. And I had to get some help for it. And by this time I am, at with the Grief Recovery Institute, but also just wanted to look out for support. I just think this is a good part of the conversation as well because I told a couple people how I was feeling, and I think they were pastors because obviously I work for a church, so half the
Yeah.
staff are pastors. And
Sure.
you need to find a Christian therapist, and so I dutifully found a Christian therapist who proceeded to tell me that I was having a hard time because I don't have enough faith.
Oh, sweet.
And
Bless
so
you.
no, what'd you say?
Said, bless you.
Yeah. I heard another you. But that was the feeling,
Yeah,
really,
sure.
like
Sure.
and no wonder people don't wanna tell the truth about themselves, like, if I'm gonna
Yeah.
be shamed spiritually
Right.
for telling the truth, um,
Yeah.
so I dutifully, left that person. And then just
Yeah.
reached out and found another therapist, and honestly, I don't know this person's faith. I didn't ask, but, what she said was pivotal for me. Um, I didn't even tell her my profession, but she says, "I think you might need to grieve," and I'm not saying this is gonna happen to you, but I think you might need to grieve the possibility that you are not gonna have, children. And when I tell you that was 100% the thing that was missing that I couldn't figure out why I was so frustrated, is because I'd had this and I wasn't the type of, adult that walked around just dreaming of being a mom, but I've had particular conversations, and I had names picked out in my head. So I've like,
Yeah.
here and there, I had created these unmet hopes and dreams inside of me, and then went on about my business, so I'm not even
Right.
consciously thinking about them, but those things all the things that are inside of us, conscious or unconscious, matter when we're talking about grief, and so there's a way to process those types of losses as well, which we call intangible ones,
Mm.
meaning it's not an actual physical relationship that we're having, but it's an emotional one, nonetheless. So I had an emotional relationship with being a mom that I had to grieve. Um,
And
even like
especially in a faith community, like there is a big tension there
mhm.
because it's like, how do you, if hope is the substance? Oh wait, if faith is the hope, how does this first go? Like faith
It's
is the
just faith of substance
of
of
things
things
hoped for,
hoped for. Uh-huh.
the evidence of things unseen. If we're supposed to
Yeah.
walk and live in that tension, it's like you're simultaneously having to like face the reality that might not happen,
Mhm.
move forward, hoping it does.
Yeah.
I was like, that is,
Mhm.
it's one of the biggest tensions, I think, in walking with God sometimes and having a life of faith is going, God, I know you have good plans for me. And even just recently for myself, when certain things come up that I'm hoping for, instead of praying for it, this just started happening this week. For some reason, I was just like, not even going to do my 10-second prayer that I normally do because I'm thinking about this thing right now. I'm just going to say, I surrender. Because not that I haven't lived a surrendered life, right? Because the temptation is like, well, I haven't never like actually put it on the altar, given it up or whatever, had
Yeah.
more faith. But just to be moving into that place of holy indifference where it's like, God, I'm open handed. I
Mhm.
want to believe that you have good things for me. What those things are, I'm not exactly sure. I want them to
Yeah.
be these things, this A, B, C, or D,
Yep.
right? But like, anyway, so I'm glad that you mentioned that because that intangible loss is, mm, it's tricky because
Yeah.
part of the beauty of being human is that we're full of hope.
Mhm.
We'll move toward hope.
Yeah.
Even that, especially having a life in God, that you are tenacious about
Mhm.
moving toward hope and clinging to hope, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's one of the important reasons why people should do grief recovery, emphasis on recovery work, and get really accustomed to doing the work is because sometimes we are going to have disappointments in life.
Right.
And in a matter, I think sometimes it's easier what we think we're protecting ourselves. We're either protecting ourselves from hurt or we're protecting our own relationship with God. Like, I don't want to be mad at God. I don't want to distrust God. So I'm not even going to go, I'm going to
Sure.
either give up this hope or because I can't maintain a hope in something because what if it doesn't happen?
Right.
And I think for believers, it could look a bunch of different ways. It could be being single, hoping for a relationship. It could be hoping for a particular job. It could be anything, and the trick is not succumbing to the idea that if God really loved me, then this is the way it would be,
Mhm.
the way I have it in my mind and in my heart.
Right. Like separating those two things, right? Like
Mhm.
entitled is the wrong word because I think that gets a really negative connotation. Like,
Mhm.
do you feel entitled to God giving you things? Yeah, like, sure, we're not entitled to things. But also, if we believe that there's certain things that God really loves to do, for instance, let's take marriage and kids as a thing, like that people tend to only have so much control of that happening for
Mhm.
them, right? Like, if we believe that marriage is a covenant that represents Christ in the church,
Yeah.
beautiful. Why wouldn't God want more of that, right? Like, if we
Yeah.
believe children are a blessing from the Lord, if this is the way, like, if God really is wrapped up in family, which I believe he is,
Yeah.
why wouldn't he want more of that? Right. And so it's not that like you're sitting there going, I'm entitled to a yacht.
Mhm.
And you're God, like I'm
Yeah.
entitled to the things that symbolize your unconditional covenantal love for
Mhm.
humanity. Right. And
Yeah.
so it's like this weird, I don't even know exactly where I'm going, but it's not like it's a bad thing. So entitled is the wrong word. It's more just, yeah, I don't
But
know.
no, I would like that you say, like, it's not an entitlement because sometimes that can be, like, the accusation that people
Right.
have is, like, you're just an entitled, you think everything should go your way and
Or
you
that God owes you something, which
Uh-huh.
he doesn't.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that you don't have your own desires
Yeah.
and your own dreams, and then it gets really sometimes it can get confusing because there's scriptures that talk about, God wants to give us the desires of our heart, um and then so how does that work
Right.
when some things go unfulfilled?
Yeah.
And I just think sometimes we never know the whole story. We feel what we feel,
Right.
and so there are some ways that I just think this side of eternity we may never know,
Right. For sure.
and I don't mean that to be like a kind of pat answer and to be,
Sure.
dismissive of the process because I've been through that numerous times in my life,
Right.
whether it was being an only child and dreaming I had a bigger family or being single and watching so many of my friends have families and it taking quite a while on my own or trying to get pregnant and not getting pregnant for years. So I've been through iterations of
Right.
it. So I understand the desire and I wouldn't look at it as entitlement, but it's quite a tender and precious thing with God to say, "Hey, I really want this thing,"
Mhm.
and it feels like you don't care if you don't give it to me, but I'm missing something, let me know.
Right. Yeah.
That that's
Give
a
me the
that's a
memo.
dance. Uh-huh.
Send me the memo, Jesus. Like, let me know
Mhm.
what's going on. And it's something that evolves. And yeah. So thank you for sharing that because you do have a unique story and that you did walk through long suffering in that
Mhm.
waiting period for both marriage and children, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I'm curious too. You said earlier that you realized that you were uncomfortable with grief and
Mm.
that when you first started doing the grief recovery method.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what you have found helpful in becoming more acquainted with and comfortable in sitting with your own grief and in sitting with other people and their grief.
So, maybe I'll start with another story and then
I love
and then
stories.
and then work my way backwards to try to
Yeah.
figure it out. I think I mentioned Russell became a mentor
Mhm.
of mine. He didn't have any children, but he called me his 4th child. He was just adopting people. So I was his 4th daughter, and, so I started off with just going to him with grief recovery, advice or just trying to get support. And then it would just kind of blend into other things. And then he was a mentor just of my dating life. An ex had come back into my life, and we were seeing each other again, and something didn't seem right. I was very
Okay.
excited to be back connected to him to an extent. That part was exciting, like, oh, this is a second chance. But at the same time was like, something about this doesn't seem right. And so I was like, Russell, please help me understand myself. Like, why? Like, why am I continuing to pursue something that I feel is not gonna work out?
Right.
And he said something that, like, blew my mind. He was like, "Well, Jocelyn, you've been doing the grief recovery work for quite some time now. So you have trained yourself to know that when your heart is broken, there's a way out for you, that you will heal, that you will get better, that you will move past it. So you will even walk yourself into a situation that can potentially harm you because you know you'll get out of it."
Interesting.
And I think one of the best things about wait, ask the question again, make sure I want to answer the
Oh,
question.
yeah. So, what helped you in becoming more acquainted with your grief and becoming more comfortable
So
processing it? Yeah.
yeah, so what helped me become more acquainted with my grief was well, I wasn't getting acquainted with my grief. I was getting acquainted with recovery.
Oh, that's good.
And
That's a good distinction.
mhm, and that's Russell again. This is grief recovery. Emphasis is on recovery, y'all. We all come in. So the grief, just a starting point. I don't want to say it doesn't matter. Of course, it
Right.
matters, but it's a starting point. So it was the habitual practice of walking through the steps
Yeah.
of grief recovery and discovering healing and expanding my capacity for happiness because something that was causing me pain no longer causes me pain, that I could actually not just in a bravado kind of way, like say, "Oh, I'm over that," but genuinely, authentically move on from a particular source of pain. Just the practice of doing it over and over again makes you bolder and makes you see that there's a aspect of life that we can live, that we don't have to settle for whatever we're feeling right now. That's some of the biggest work that we like to put out into the world. It's great to start on whatever loss that is really occupying a lot of your mental and emotional space right now, but don't stop there.
Right.
Um,
Right.
keep doing the work. Lots of people use like an iceberg model that shows there's so much stuff that happens underneath the surface that we don't see,
Mhm.
and then there's the part that's above the surface that we do see is just what we tell people, what we actually confess with our own mouths, and then everything else lies underneath the surface.
Sure.
The more work you do, the more you're pushing that iceberg up, the more that's coming above the surface, the less that there is underneath and hidden. And as you go about the business of getting healing for yourself, you're in a way indistinctly, is that the right word? You're subtly
Yeah.
teaching others that healing is possible for them
Mhm.
too.
That's good. That's good. I think even in your story, using the example of being in a relationship with an ex where you were like, I don't know, something. So you call your mentor, right? And I think what's beautiful about that is him basically saying, you've been doing a lot of this work. So you know that if something happens, you're going to be okay. If
Mhm,
you were growing in being acquainted with the recovery part of it, but also being confident in like, hey, even if there's pain at the end of this, I'm going to walk through it.
mhm,
I'm gonna come through it. So
yeah,
the beautiful part for me listening to you was you could approach life
yeah,
and be like, hey, this feels a little risky or this feels a
mhm,
little scary,
yep,
but it's gonna be okay. Right.
mhm.
And I mean, that's not a license to get into a relationship that's gonna be toxic,
Don't
right? But
be
it's like,
reckless, but we're not
hey,
talking about being reckless.
no, no, you're talking about exploring something that could have been,
Mhm.
a life partner, right? Where
Seeing
you're
it through to its natural end because
right.
it naturally came to an end.
Instead of just being like, I'm scared, peace out. Being like,
Mhm.
"Hey, you know what? That's okay. I can walk through this. We can
Yeah.
have the
Yep.
conversations. We can
Right.
get the answers we need, and we can decide."
Yeah. Because if I had just said peace out
Yeah.
without knowing why, like, it became clear why. And when it was clear, then that's when it ended.
Yeah. Yeah, and you wouldn't have known. You would have had questions. And then if he would have come back around a third time, you might have been like, "Oh, so that face."
"Oh, let's try it a third time. Third time's a charm."
But you
Start
might have done it, right?
right?
Because you didn't get the questions answered.
Mhm.
And so I think that's a very beautiful thing. The image I'm seeing right now is you kind of with a floaty on, one of those circular floaty. You're about to hop in the pool, but you have a little life tube floaty on.
Mhm.
And you're not gonna drown. Not that you would drown anyway, but you know what I'm saying? It's almost this life preserver,
Right.
of, "Hey, I can go into these murky or deep waters,
Mhm.
and I can explore,
Yeah.
and but I'm be okay,"
I
you
can
know?
see what I need to see.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm gonna
And
be
then go
okay.
on about my way.
Yeah. No, that's so good. Thanks for sharing that. So, in that, what I hear, and you can add to it, if you think something different, but what I would say if I were gonna give someone else advice would be, "Hey, the more you actually face your grief, tell the truth about it, become acquainted with it, and practice moving through it and moving through the recovery part of it, the easier it will be for you to be comfortable in them, in
Mhm.
the hard feelings, in
Yeah.
the uncomfortable feelings. Even if it does feel uncomfortable, like you can settle into it, right? And
Mhm.
so I think one thing in walking with people through grief is that it's so uncomfortable. It can be so
Mhm.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what I feel about uh, the exposure method of therapy. Like you just expose yourself more and more to the thing that you're afraid of, and then you like walk through it. So I think there's some truth in that. I think it's sometimes that can be unhelpful, but I think in the case of walking with people through grief,
Mhm.
exercising the practice of being very uncomfortable is
Yeah.
one of the only ways that we
Mhm.
can be more present and more helpful
Mhm.
to people
Yeah.
as they're walking through hard seasons.
Yep. Yeah. With the 15 years I've been doing this work, it's still not comfortable.
Okay.
There's no amount of practice in this that makes it a breeze. It's not.
Still
I
not 5-year-old Jocelyn's life goals to be in
no,
recovery.
right.
Okay.
No, mhm. Sit with people in their pain. There's a beauty in it, but it's not a comfortable process.
Mhm.
I remember when I first got trained at church, people started throwing grievers in front of me.
Oh, wow.
This is the part that people need to understand. I don't know any more than you do what to say to this person. I know some things to not say. I know some that are not helpful, but
Okay.
there are no perfect words. I'm not going to
Sure.
create some magical words in this moment that heals this person's heart.
Yeah.
That's a process and a journey they're going to have to engage in their own.
Mhm. Mm. What are the things that you don't say?
Uh, well, you don't say.
You don't say.
One of the things I heard the very day my mom died and some church friends came over, and a very well-meaning friend was like, "Well, you can rejoice because your mom's in heaven." I'm
Mm.
like, "You just don't wanna say that, like, because that what? I've just lost my mother and I'm supposed to rejoice?" That's
Yeah.
we sometimes can say things that are spiritually true, they can be intellectually true, and at the same time, they're emotionally barren. So, yes, wonderful that my mother is in a good place, but me, Jocelyn, is grieving her not being physically here on earth, and
Right.
that is a process that deserves to be respected and addressed and acknowledged.
Mhm.
Um so sometimes when we are not comfortable with others' pain, we try to shut it down. So we try to get them to think of something else or do something else. Do anything except for feeling what you're feeling because really what's happening is it's making me uncomfortable and it making me address the fact that there's some unresolved stuff that I ignore. So I'm just going to try to
Right.
tell you to do it as well. So telling people to think about something else or basically don't feel bad. There's tons of creative ways we come up to tell people to not feel what they're actually feeling.
Sure.
So, And sitting in that uncomfortable space with somebody is a blessing to give them your attention in the moment, not knowing what's going to happen from one moment to the next, but them just knowing that you are in non-anxious presence with them.
Mhm.
That's one of the great things that we can do for other people. But we have the myths that we talk about. So telling people to not feel bad or thinking that you can go out and replace whatever you've lost with some other version of it,
True.
or it's just somehow enough time's going to go by and it's going to be okay. No, we just get accustomed to whatever pain we've been feeling, but that doesn't mean you heal from it. Or the big one for me is when people tell you to be strong and
Mm,
why? What purpose does it serve to act like you have it all together on the outside, but never get to the deepest parts of your soul that are hurting, that need attention?
right.
And when you're too busy being strong and showing the world how strong you are, you can't do both. You're picking one or the other.
Right.
So, do you wanna pick being strong and looking good and that performative nature that we so easily can fall into? Or do you want to choose to be vulnerable enough to tell the truth about yourself
Yeah.
and engage in that process?
Mm, that's really good. So those are really great reminders. But I think
Mhm.
sometimes we're well intentioned and then we are uh we're used to hearing certain things, right? Like, oh, he's in a better place, for instance.
Mhm.
We're used to hearing things like that. Or you'll see him again one day,
Mhm.
or at least they're not in pain anymore. All
Yeah.
those kinds of things where
Mhm.
that's good reminders that those phrases, they roll off the tongue easily.
Yeah.
They're not comforting. It's like
Mhm.
it's not a balm on the wound.
Yeah.
It is more like throwing acid's the wrong word, but it's like more like re-injuring the person or picking off the scab or pulling
Yeah.
off the band-aid than it
Or
is like a soothing, calming, supportive presence thing to say.
yeah, or even just pretending that there is no wound, you know,
Mm,
just talking around it
sure,
and not addressing
sure.
the actual need.
Right. No, that's huge. And I think sometimes saying the obvious feels weird, right?
Mhm.
I saw a friend recently who's going through a divorce, and I hadn't seen her in a while, hadn't seen her since it happened. I greeted her, we were talking for a few minutes, and all of a sudden I realized, like, oh, there needs to be acknowledgement, right? So I just
Mhm.
finally was just like, hey, I'm really sorry about what you're going through. And
Yeah.
then I kind of gave a minute, like a little space. Like, do they want to talk about it? Do they not want to talk about it? But
Mhm.
at least we've acknowledged it. Like, it's out here. We're not
Yeah.
going to pretend it's not happening. We're not going to let the
Mhm.
moment slip by. Like, it's just not going to worry that maybe everyone's saying that.
Mhm.
'Cause maybe they're not, right? No loss for me to say one sentence and
Yeah.
then to respond to their response. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
and it's just such a weird dynamic because we think, "Oh, I don't wanna bring it up," and then they're gonna be in pain again. It's like, you can't make them feel more pain than they're
uh
actually feeling,
right. And that's been a
actually.
common thread in every grief conversation I've had so far has been
Mhm.
the person who's already in pain. Like,
They already know the pain.
you
They're
much can't
familiar
make it
with
worse.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
You're not making it worse. You're helping that person feel seen. The thing that occupies their life, the memories and the challenges and just all of the energy that's a constant for them. And you just asking, if they don't want to talk about it, they don't want to talk about it, that's fine. But it's quite a blessing to hear from another person, "Hey, I know you're going through a hard time," to say out of your mouth, and I just wanna see how you're doing with it. The the ability for a griever to feel seen by people, to feel respected and thought of, you can't underestimate that need. So, I think err on the side of saying something.
Yeah.
And if they need to give you a boundary, they'll just like, "I don't wanna talk about it," then you don't talk about it. But otherwise, it's very helpful for a griever to know, "I'm actually not alone. This is
Yeah.
a very tough thing I'm going through." people don't understand it the way I do,
Sure.
but people do care, and that doesn't take away the pain, but it's very helpful in avoiding those kind of thoughts about I'm all alone in this world or nobody, all
Right.
the paths that we can walk down that lead us to desperation and despair, to avoid those, and we avoid them in community, with people showing up.
That's so
But
good.
yeah, unfortunately, they can't fix it for us, but they
Yeah.
can just be present.
That's so good. And so it kind of answers this question. What does community mean to you when viewed through the lens of grief? And I feel
Mhm.
like you kind of were answering that already, but curious if there's anything else you want to add to it.
I think so. Community through the lens of grief, that's an interesting question. I think it's let's call it a shifting and a discernment when it comes to your grief community, because there can be people in your life that you love dearly, that you've had, a wonderful life with, but they are not equipped to be supportive or understanding in this particular process, and knowing that about people. So your community is going to look different. So it may not be particular family members. It may not be that person you typically go to with advice who typically has a quick answer for everything,
Sure.
because they may not be well versed or practiced in recovery. So it may be a stranger walking down the street that has just an ability to speak to something quickly in your life that really matter, that makes a difference for you. So you know how you had mentioned earlier when you were sharing with put somebody you knew for a few weeks, you were sharing some
Yeah.
deep things about your life.
Yeah.
But that was in a community where we had established um some ground rules that we were working with that helps you talk about some things of importance. And so I'd say the grief community, like looking through the lens of grief, you're really looking for uh like-hearted, I don't want to say like-minded, but, yeah,
Sure.
but like-hearted people, people who understand that their job isn't to fix you. mm,
Sure.
People who are able, like that non I always go back to that. Can you be a non-anxious presence?
Hmm.
And when somebody is in pain, that's a tall order. It's a tall, order to be where, you're sitting with someone, in pain. I think it's just important to know, like, that community is maybe different than any other community you've ever expe than your present community, and it's okay. It doesn't mean the people that you're not going to, who you care about, they just this is not for them,
Sure.
for you.
Right.
So, just knowing that there'll be shifts in who you may reach out to, or who you confide in, um, and that's okay.
Hmm. Hmm. That's really huge. So, an underlying sentiment that I heard is don't be surprised if,
Mhm,
like, don't be surprised if things shift a little bit. Don't be surprised if you find yourself gravitating toward different people in the
mhm,
season. And
mhm,
doesn't mean that the other people are going to go away forever or that they're no longer in your life. It's just like, don't be surprised if you find community in in unexpected places or in different
mhm.
places than you're used to
Yeah, mhm.
while you're walking through grief, right?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be your typical tight-knit group. It doesn't have to
Right.
be that.
Right.
It's
Right.
anyone who has the ability to understand
Mm,
the process that grief is, and that I am not going to fix you, tell you what to think, what to do.
right.
Um, but I will support you the best way that I can as you journey through your unique process.
Right. Right. That's really good. That's really, really good. You have given us so many gems, so many nuggets of wisdom, as yourself, as Jocelyn, but also as someone who's very versed in grief recovery.
Mhm,
And I love that also you have this angle of you are training people who are going to be caring for grievers as well. So it's almost like you have two vantage points, if you will. But
Mhm.
I'm curious, as a friend, as
Mhm.
Jocelyn, taking off the certified grief recovery method.
Well, that's a new one.
I'm creating a new denomination out of taking off that hat, is there anything else you would say to people as they're either walking through grief or walking with others through grief?
As a friend, the only thing so that I think there's just one difference because as specialists, as much as because you do wear 2 hats. We're always, specialists and grievers and specialists and humans all at the
Right.
same time. Um, as specialists, as much as we love the work, as much as we are cheerleaders for it, as much as we want the whole world to do it, we cannot force anyone to do the work themselves. It has to be of their own volition. It has to be them
Sure.
saying, "Hey, my heart is broken. Um, I would like to do something about it. I want to engage in these steps. And can you help me in that
Right.
process?" Right? So that's the part where we come along. And so I mean, there have been people who I've gently suggested for years. Alex Jones Moreno. No, he not. No, he's talked about it before. Like I, I and he's not the only one. I'm just giving him a hard time. But because I recognize he's going through a loss. And because if you know Alex, this is a jovial, lighthearted, upbeat dude. And those people sometimes have a very hard time with this work because it's not their wheelhouse, right?
Sure.
So I spent years just kind of gently talking about it to him. Um, so it could be his choice. And when he decided he was ready, then he did it. So as a friend, I feel like if I, could completely take off the specialist hat, I could just be a little bit more like, no, you need to do this. Like
Got
I
it.
can't do that as a specialist. But as a
Right.
friend, I could like,
Right. Right.
push a little bit harder.
Sure, sure. That makes sense. So you so see the value in walking through it, walking through grief recovery that you're like, come on, let's go. Let's go, let's
Mhm.
go, let's go. But as the specialist, it feels like you're coming from a more of a biased place. So you have to be very gentle. And I mean, and truly like you were gentle with me, but you were also like, so I'm thinking, like, like, buddy, like,
Let's chat.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I knew it was my friend Jocelyn talking to me. I knew it
Mhm.
wasn't like Jocelyn who
Mhm.
was like, "Hey, this is what I do," whatever, whatever, right? It was
Yeah.
my friend Jocelyn is seeing a need in my life and she's presenting me with an opportunity.
Yeah,
and so
yeah, no.
and so
Yeah, the first year that I was a specialist and doing it at church there were some growing pains, man, like, because
mm,
the pastors were sending all the grievers my way, and they were dutifully coming to grief recovery because the pastor told them to be there.
okay.
Not always because they wanted to.
Got it.
I had some pissed off people in some of my groups because they didn't want to. They weren't ready. They had to get to a place, and most of them did. They had to get to a place where they're like, "Oh, I'm here because I need to address some things, not because pastor told me to be here."
Right.
So
Right.
and until that shift happened, people were angry.
I mean, and that makes sense.
Mhm.
Truly, that makes sense.
Mhm.
And and I think sometimes as people who are watching or walking through someone like walking through grief or whatever with life with someone, it's way easier on the outside to be like, boom, that's what needs to happen. Or like, it's
Mhm.
now, it's time. But can we trust the person in our life
Yeah.
that when they're ready, they will? We
Mhm.
trust the Holy Spirit in their life because we
Yeah.
don't know what's going on under the surface. As humans, we only have capacity to deal with so many things at a time.
Right.
Like sometimes we just don't have capacity
Mhm.
to explore certain things at a deeper level.
Mhm.
Trying to feed our kids or
Yeah.
trying to like
Right.
show up
Just
for our
today.
job or whatever,
Mhm.
right? And also, can we use our voices, right? Because it doesn't mean just because you're trusting a process or that you don't say anything.
Yeah.
The combination of discerning, like
Mhm.
what can they hear right now? what's appropriate right now, what else is going on, and then letting go and being like, I also can't see the whole picture.
Right.
Like, I can't see that bottom of the iceberg. I
Mhm,
can't see the
mhm.
invisible hand of God at work.
Yeah,
I
but
can't, you know?
I was just thinking an ounce of humility will help. Like, if you just think about all the things that God is patiently developing and building in us,
Sure.
if you see that structure, then oh, that's the same for everybody else.
Right. Come on. That was so good. That's gonna be one of my big takeaways today is like an ounce of humility will help. Tell the truth, but an ounce of humility
Mhm.
will help. Like
Just a teeny bit, just a teeny bit'll do.
just
Just
a
a
little guy.
dabble, do
Just a
you?
little bit. Just a little bit. Just a dabble do. Yeah, that was good. Oh, so good. So good. I want to ask one more grief question and then one fun question, if that's okay.
Oh, okay.
So earlier you were talking about losing your mom, talking
Mhm,
about grieving all of that, and then going through grief recovery and talking about realizing your unresolved grief is with your dad. I'm curious, when you became a mother,
mhm.
did you find a new layer of grief you needed to walk through related to
Oh,
losing?
boy.
And how did you address that?
Oh, sister.
Oh,
Let me tell you. So, I describe, losing my mom in 3 iterations.
okay.
The first we didn't talk about, which was, I think I was in the 4th grade, and, her brother died. You know how you see siblings who just love each other? Like,
Yeah.
I really love to see siblings who just enjoy one another. That's how my mother and her brother were. They loved each other dearly. So she lost her best friend when he died, and my mother didn't have any grief recovery skills, so she was grieving for, I'd say, a good 2 years that I didn't recognize my mom anymore. Like, she was
Right.
physically there, but emotionally she was somewhere else. She wasn't the mom that I knew. So
Right.
that was the first time that I lost her, and then, when she died was the second iteration of that. And then the third time was when I had Jonathan when he was born because, I didn't see it coming. Well, I had feelings leading up to it that I finally, like, a week before he was born, finally said out of my mouth, "I'm grieving that my mom is not here."
Oh.
Uh, and, she named him.
Oh.
This is part of that story of the unconscious dreams. When I was little, I was like, "Mom, I don't wanna be I don't wanna be an only child." And she's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, dear. That's in the cards for you because the doctor said I can't have any more kids." But then in saying that and me telling the truth about myself, it encouraged her to tell me some things. So she's like, "I always wanted" this is an unmet hope for her. "I always wanted to have, more kids. I always wanted to have a boy and a girl. The girl's name was Jocelyn, and the boy's name was gonna be Jonathan." And
Oh.
so I said, "Okay, mom, one day when I get older, I'll have a son and I'll name him Jonathan for you." So I decided to keep the name even though my mom wasn't here to enjoy it, but there was a deep grief in her not being able to meet him, um, and just knowing the sheer joy that, the bundle of energy that child is, but how that would have been such a sweet, sweet season of life for her. That was like grieving all over again. Her not being able to have that experience.
Sure. Wow. 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 Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I
Yeah.
think sometimes we forget. It's not like grief is around every bush, right? But I think we can expect for it to come up,
Mhm.
as life moves on,
Yeah.
especially when you've lost a person, as life continues to move on with
Yeah.
and the person isn't present. It's like, don't be surprised if there's layers, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's the intangible part because she's no longer here, but I still have an emotional relationship in my
Right.
heart, my mind, and things that I wish were different or
Right.
things that come up that I'm like, oh, this is something else that would have been just really great to be able to see or to have, and that's not going to be.
Right.
So even when somebody dies, the physical relationship ends, but the emotional one, it does continue. And there'll be sometimes new things to pop up, like, oh, this is a new thing to grieve. This is another one of those little dreams I had tucked away. Don't really think about them too often, but it's coming up in this moment. And now I realize it's something else that I can grieve.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And one fun question.
Okay.
or maybe two. The first one is, what's giving you life these days? Could be
Okay.
anything. Could be real simple. Could be red vines, water. Could be sunshine. Could
But
be
I'm,
Jonathan.
yeah, I'm trying to think of the the little what would be
Be big. It doesn't have to be little.
okay, well, I'll just go with one. So, Jonathan he had a speech delay, and so up until about a year ago, he just didn't talk very much, and now that's changed. He has all the words. So it's been a joy to engage in conversation because I spent so many years not being able to not to have a
Yeah.
conversation. So sometimes he says funny or little silly things. Like one time we had some greens and he didn't want to eat greens and he was crying. He's like, "The greens are sad." Like, are the greens sad or are you sad?
That's awesome.
But little moments like that are really fun.
Precious.
Mhm.
Also, what's your favorite dessert?
I have a top 3, but I'll say that my favorite I still is, it's a Thai dessert,
Okay.
sticky rice with coconut ice cream and mango.
That's a good
I
one.
don't know if you've ever have you
I've
had that?
had it. Yeah, it's so good.
It's just,
Something about that sticky rice.
the
Mm-mm.
sticky it's buttery, it's
Yeah.
sweet,
Yeah.
it's all the things.
That's a good one. You can make it yourself, but it's like, it's not second nature, at least not for me.
I've
So,
never attempted. I keep saying I should try one of these, but I haven't tried.
mm.
Have you tried?
I had a roommate in college who made it a couple times, and
Mhm,
she did a good job. It was good.
mhm.
I've never tried personally. So, Jamie Lindsay, we need you. Or that's not even her married name. Her married name is different. I went straight back to 19-year-old Trish.
What's your
Anyway,
favorite?
my favorite, oh gosh, kind of depends on the day. Sometimes it's brownies.
Mhm.
Okay, if you want to talk about my go-to candy, it's gonna be anything sour. Like Sour Patch Kids or like
All the sour
all the
stuff.
sour, like sour belts, like
Mhm,
desserts wise. I've really been digging this sea salt caramel. Oh, and like throwing some chocolate chips in there. Ooh,
mhm.
so good. Mm-mm.
How far away are you from Pasadena?
About an hour 20-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright.
Why? What is it? What is it?
Oh,
No, I used to live there. I love me some Pasadena.
so next time, whenever you're there, I follow this girl on TikTok.
Okay.
So she started out as a personal chef,
Mhm.
and she was cooking for professional athletes, and then he got traded. She's like, "Oh,
Oh,
what am I gonna do now?" So she started getting more clients, and people just started following her, just her journey, and so she started selling cookies, and she didn't
okay.
even have a storefront. She was just, like, renting this little kitchen
Yeah.
and selling her cookies. She blew up on TikTok, so since her cookies were so popular, she started, her own storefront. It's in Pasadena.
Oh, cool. What's it
Um,
called?
it's called, Bad Ash Bakes.
Bad Ash Bakes.
Her name's Ashley, Bad Ash Bakes,
Okay.
and apparently her cinnamon rolls are the closest thing to heaven. Like, that's how
Oh.
people describe them.
Oh, okay.
But she also makes because you said brownies. She makes brownies, she makes everything. She makes all the things. She makes a tons of cakes. You you can go and tell me. So
Okay. Well, I will report back. I have to go
please
there
do.
in a couple weeks, so I will report back.
Oh, I love it. I love that for you.
But okay, when you come into town next, and if you are planning to go to Pasadena, I'll send you a list of 4 other places you must go.
In Pasadena.
Yeah, food places.
Okay.
Yep, because it's good food. So
Mhm.
there. Uh, I'm gonna stop the recording now. But
Okay.
oh wait, before I do though, Jocelyn, thank you for your time.
Yes. Thank you again for having
Yeah,
me.
I appreciate you taking time to be on the podcast to contribute your voice to the conversation. Um, yeah, I always enjoy talking to you, and I always get a lot out of our conversations, and I really appreciate it. You are a gem.
Yeah. Well, thank you for making this happen so we can connect again. And it
Yeah,
is, this conversation is important. So always happy to have it. And it was a bonus that I got to do it with you.
for sure. Well, I will link all of the things and ways people can get in touch with you and in touch with the grief recovery method in the show notes so people can access that because it's invaluable resources. And like I mentioned, and I've gone through the grief recovery method myself, so I can vouch for it. Grief groups are great.
All right. Thanks for listening. I hope you were able to take away some gems with you. I'm 100% gonna think about this line for a while. An ounce of humility will help. I mean, don't know what to do? Just grab a little ounce of humility. No problem. Not sure what to say? Swallow a little humility. Anyway, I hope that you guys have a great rest of your day, whatever you're doing, and I would love to hear from you. So send up a flare. Don't be afraid. Reach out.